Unfortunately, most people don't care until it happens to them. The number one question you and I and the whole world asks, how much time do I have? If I only knew then what I know now. Cancer rates are rising. Diet has changed. Environment has changed. The microbiome is changing. All of the experts will say the same thing. Eat minimally processed food and avoid ultra-processed food. It's that accumulative effect. My glass, eventually, it's going to overflow if I fill it with too much water. So if I take all of the things around me, like microplastics, like glyphosate, like volatile organic compounds, imagine your dog's body, right? We say this all the time, buy a filter or be the filter.
What is the difference between a pet parent 1.0 and a pet parent 2.0? Let's put it on loop. And I kept listening to it all evening. And I had little Rusty, little puppy sleeping on me. And I was like tearing up, right? And I was like, he's going to have the best life. And I will make sure that everything I do, he will have the best life. You change lots of people's lives. You are really genuinely, truly have.
Welcome to the DAFY podcast, the place where you will get expert-led and science-backed advice on dog health and nutrition. No more confusion and no more conflicting opinions. Just clear guidance to help you make informed decisions for your pup. Because when it comes to our dogs, they deserve the very best care. And we, as dog parents, deserve confidence in the choices we make for them. Let's meet an expert.
Rodney, welcome to the DAFY podcast. It's an honor to have you on today.
The honor is all mine, Gaia. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to mind jam with you. Listen, where is your beautiful accent from?
I think that you can't hear it that much anymore, but it's Italian. Can you hear it still?
It's Italian.
Yes.
How do you say your name in Italian?
So my name is Gaia. Everyone says Gaia, but it's Gaia. Yeah.
Gaia in Italian. I'm going to call you Gaia because I've been to Italy. I went twice to film Dr. Biagio Daniello when he did the study on dogs can smell chemo signals in fear. So we flew to Naples to film them. When I did my second TED Talk, they asked me to keynote in Mexico, and they said, can you get some live footage? So then I remember I was like, where is Dr. Biagio? And I was like, please be in Italy, please be in Italy. And he was in Italy. And so it was like on my bucket list. So I got to go down there. I got to film him. And then Dr. Misa Sandri and Bruno Stefanon, who did the two diets, the one where they took Hill Science diet and two trials, two dogs. One, they replicated the food. One, they fed it cooked. One, they extruded and kibble. And the other, they fed it raw. And to show that dogs had a better microbiome eating the same food, but the processing technique really mattered. And they were in Venice. So I got to go to Venice. And then Dr. Gene Dodds has a home in Venice. And anyways.
So you've been in Venice and where else? In Italy?
And Naples.
It's in Naples. Yeah, you're very lucky. It's beautiful there, isn't it?
Both universities. I went to both universities. Best food. Oh man. Yeah. I want to go back so bad. I got to, I celebrated 2018 was one of the trips. I celebrated New Year's there. And so I got to have New Year's in Venice. Oh, it was unbelievable.
It's so nice, isn't it? Honestly, we actually go there every year for 3 months. So this is why I love to kind of work online, because we can do that. And so we are leaving in less than a month and we're staying for 3 months this time. And Rusty, I've got a little Cavalier. He loves the snow. He's like a husky in another life.
Yeah.
He sees the snow and he can be in snow for hours and hours and hours. And so that is his face when it's in snow.
Yes.
Makes my heart so full, because even now it's like 6. We went there last year. We were in the Dolomites last year.
Yes.
He was going crazy. He was rolling into snow. And I was it's so beautiful to see him like a puppy again.
Do you know where I live in Nova Scotia? It is on the same hemisphere as Italy. So we have the exact same weather. So
beautiful.
Yeah. Are you in the UK currently?
I am, yes. So I live in the UK. I live in the south west, Bournemouth, close to Southampton. It's like south of England, by the seaside, essentially.
Okay.
And it's fully here. But
I'm only 4 hours from you by plane. So when I come to the UK, because I had my original agent, which was Lindsay Boyd, who's Robbie Williams and David Beckham, her brand coach. She's got a book called Brand Famous. So I flew to the UK when she signed me for my first deal. And it was like unbelievable experience there. And my second largest following is in the United Kingdom, which is so we got 10 million people that come in and to visit the pages from the UK, which is when the book Forever Dog came out and hit the UK Times. I was like,
Yes.
They were like, do you guys know? Nobody told us, by the way. We had to find out the weird way. And it was like, holy moly. They were like, yeah, there's never been foreign international authors in the dog space to ever hit the UK Times. And I didn't know what the UK Times was, but they said it's exactly like the New York Times, to just show the amount of people there that are so magical. And like my fifth largest following is Italy. We have such a massive volume in Italia.
Really?
It's like unbelievable. Oh my gosh.
That's interesting. I would have never thought that.
Italy is
Mainly
massive.
because the language barrier.
So our book, The Forever Dog, is translated in Italian. It released it came out in Italy, and it hit the Italian bestseller list. So it's called, gosh, what is Italy called there? Have you seen the book in Italian?
You know what? No, because I actually found you and I was already leaving the UK. And so my life has always been English. But if it's being translated, I can actually, I agree with that, because Italian people are very healthy and that's how they look after their dogs.
Hold on. I have the book here somewhere. It's here. It's either on this wall here or it's here.
Yeah.
I wish I could read Italian, but I think this is it. Is this Italian?
Let me have a look. Move a little bit closer. Oh, yes, it is. Il cane è giovane. Yeah, of course. Il cane è sempre giovane, right? Yeah, which means young dog forever. For the forever dog.
So the incredible following that we had in Italy, all the pet parents started reaching out and said, we want the book translated in Italian. So then a bunch of pet parents got together. They found an Italian publisher and they were like, please, the publisher is called Macro. And they were like, please publish the book for us. So the book published maybe 2 years ago, and then it hit the bestseller. And then everyone like contacted us in Italy. And my gosh, it's just the scientists and the people there, just unbelievable. And so I had the support of Italy early on in my career, and I didn't know that. And then, and then I got a couple of people reached out to me from Italy, a couple of scientists and so on and so forth. And they're like, you and Dr. Becker here in Italy, our pet parent following's unbelievable. They got us involved, a couple scientists, into the bowl studies. So there's a famous Italian bowl study that came out and I published it 2 years ago, where they were saying that they found problem with stainless steel and the types of bacteria that can grow in stainless steel, right?
Yeah.
And then Biagio Daniello, he set the record. His publication in 2018 that had come out was the most viewed publication where dogs could actually smell fear and the chemo signals, and then they would become those emotions. So yes, sorry, I'll stop talking about Italy.
No, I genuinely really love it. I was actually rewatching your TED Talks yesterday, and I was like, you were mentioning, I can't remember if it was, you did actually a podcast as well a couple of months ago. I can't remember when it was, but you mentioned that. And I love that. No, it was on the TED Talk. You mentioned that on the TED Talk. I'm sure you have, about, going to Italy. And I love that. This is just brilliant, isn't it? And I can see that happening all the time. So to give you a bit of background about me, so I can do it on the podcast, but anyway, I started my career in marketing, and then we got Rusty, and I listened to your TED Talk. So how it happened essentially is my husband came back from London one evening. So my husband he has a recruitment agency, and he was recruiting for a marketing manager for a dog health supplement company in London. And so he came back to me that evening. We had Rusty, he must have been 4 months old at the time. And he said, I was talking to this girl, and she said, I was telling her about Rusty being a puppy. And she said, you have to listen to this TED Talk. Like, you have to, like, if you're a new dog owner, you have to listen. And Rich was like, he said, watch this TED Talk. So I opened it up straight away. That must have been 2020, I think. Yes, it would have been 2020. And I was like, I started listening to it, right? And I was like, the first one and then the second one. And then I put it on loop, and I kept listening to it all evening. And I had little puppy sleeping on me. And I was like tearing up, right? And I was like, he is going to have the best life. And I will make sure that everything I do, he will have the best life. And that's when, I'm not joking, I started to get into dog health and nutrition. From that TED Talk that you did. I always loved health in general. Like, I'm just generally a very healthy person, so I'm always been quite health focused, but I never had a clue what health looked like for dogs. And it was amazing. So firstly, thank you.
Thank you.
I know you changed lots of people's lives, but you really genuinely, truly have.
It was an honor for me to be asked to do that. and I was scared. Dr. Becker was in the audience, my father, my mother, my sister.
Really?
Because you grow up your whole life when you get invited so there was no TED Talks in Canada. So in British Columbia, finally, I think the rights went there. I'm not sure about how that logistics worked, but I remember they were doing official TED Talks in British Columbia. So they had said to me that they had started the TEDx program for people that couldn't get out there. The TEDx program has morphed over the years, but at that time, you could go to certain geographical locations to attend and do those talks. And so they said to me, would you want to apply and go to the big TED stage in British Columbia, or would you want to do a TEDx in a small, tiny little auditorium in your hometown? And it was like a no-brainer for me. It was a no-brainer. First of all, because I was scared and I did not want to head in that direction. So I was like, I'll do it in my tiny little hometown. And it filled with people because they were like, Jesus, Rod's doing a TEDx talk. And, he's like a monkey. So the fact that he's invited to do this, you've got like these brilliant scientists. I was very scared because I did not want the science community I didn't want to embarrass and degrade the science community just being a pet parent walking up on there. And so it came out, and then they contacted me and said, this is like a rocket ship trajectory. And then it ended up being the most viewed TED Talk of all time for dogs ever. And when they told me that, I was like, oh my God. And that's in 2018. So 3 years later, Mexico, the city of Mexico, the president said, let's have our first TEDx talk here in Mexico City. But who are we going to get? And then that's when me and Karen got invites to keynote it. And it was like, oh my God, now that I did the first one, I have so much that I want to do for the second one. And that's when I got on a plane, I flew to Italy, and I wanted to show people how fun, like citizen science, that term that we can hold as pet parents in terms of sharing the science of scientists to people around the world, making it layman and so on and so forth, and it being our duty as citizens to share science to make the world a better place. And so, it started that whole journey. And sorry, Gaia, I don't want this to be all about like this, because obviously you have questions and stuff like that, but I don't have a lot of these conversations. Yesterday and today, I feel like it's God talking to me, because yesterday, the Farmer's Dog, which is like the 5th largest brand in terms of in the United States, and they home cook diets, the company's valued at hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I was talking to the two owners because we were talking about science, and they were like, we would have never started the company unless we didn't see the TED Talk. Yeah. We watched the TED Talk and said, we want to build a company, and now they've got like a $1 billion company. Because God wanted, I'm a Roman Catholic kid, so I grew up in a very Catholic home. So God, obviously, whether you're religious or you're not, the universe, God, whatever is that ultimate power, was like, you need to do this because this information needs to get out, and so whatever. So I'm just kind of the messenger. I don't take any credit for what all the incredible scientists had done. I was just blessed to be able to be the dummy to be able to present it to people.
Yeah, but that's I would just say, to comment back on that is the hardest thing to do. And I'm kind of like feeling it right now, because I am trying to, in a way, like connect dog owners and experts, but it's hard work if you don't know how to explain the science in the right way and how to message it. And, like you go to a vet and they would explain things in a very difficult way. Mm-hmm. The way you explain it, it's so easy for people to understand, but you also bring the emotional part to it. And I love that. And I think that's why you really connect with people, and people really like get what you're talking about. And I love that. I love that, because that is really hard, and you've got that skill to do that. And that's beautiful.
It's because you and I, growing up with foreign parents in terms of the countries that you and I both live in, we have some people, I call it a gift, because when you come in and you have foreign parents and you have to learn to communicate in foreign countries, it gives you a skill to be able to communicate on such a minute, like a low level of communication with like, hi, bye, hello, mm-hmm. I want this, how much is this? It was literally the gift that I was possessed with because of my incredible, and because we both have foreign parents, it gave me the ability to be able to communicate with the outside world, right? Because I think what happens for a lot of content creators is that only 19% of the planet speaks English. So what are you going to do with 81% of the rest of the planet? And that's how I was trying to communicate. So I was trying to use simple words, simple visuals, and tried to talk to the entire world. I didn't want to talk to just America. I didn't want to talk to Canada. I want to talk to the whole world. So how do I talk to 81% of the world population? And it was just keeping it simple, easy. Oftentimes, some people get offended by it because they're like, you make it too easy. But yeah, I mean, if you're trying to talk to the world, you can't be that. If you want complicated, then go listen to Dr. Becker, who uses big fancy words, or go listen to a scientist, or go to a lab. They'll make it very hard to understand. And so, or I shouldn't say hard to understand, but they'll make it more technical. And some people like technical. Yeah.
Yes. Because I've been interviewing like a gut microbiologist and this kind of level of experts. And I just, even with my knowledge, right? And I've been studying dog health nutrition for about 5 years. Sometimes I get lost. So if you think, then you put into perspective to a like a normal dog owner, you know, it's the communication part I think is really important, but it's beautifully explained, right? Do it in a simple way. That's really good too, you know, and I think your background really helped. And I get what you mean, like, because I had to learn to talk in a very simple way as well. So yeah, I love that.
And I love the fact you and I were talking earlier, your homeland, beautiful Italy, the most unbelievable place that I was able to visit. And the dog owners down there are like on a whole nother level.
They are very passionate. I think it's like very healthy focused country, isn't it, Italy?
The amount of home-fed animals that are there. So if you look at now there was a statistic that came out that showed that the majority of the country, God, I wish I had the stat on me, home feed their animals more than they feed ultra-processed food in the country. Like Italy just has, they're just very intelligent people.
I grew up with animals as well all my life. I never had my own dog, but we had family dogs, and it was always like, you know, table scrap, like healthy one, but always table scrap. Very limited amount of, like, we call it crocchette, which is kibble.
Yes.
And always, like, you know, there is a little bit of leftover, the dog is going to get it. And
Gaia, let me put this too. Here in North America, in Canada, and in the United States, there's always like these don't do lists. Like feeding mushrooms could be like potentially dangerous. Culinary mushrooms, obviously, we're talking about, or feeding like almonds is going to kill your pet. I'm like, go to Europe, go to Italy, go to places all around the world. Do you think that when they throw the food outside, that they're thinking of a non-toxic or toxic or obstruction list? Like, people, get out and see what's happening in the rest of the world, the majority of the population. Look, I love Canada. I'm a Canadian, you know, born and raised, but my parents come from Lebanon, right? Just right around the bend from Italy. They don't talk about, you know, like, they don't talk about what goes in food there. Animals have been eating these foods for like hundreds and hundreds of years. We get into this debate about onions, and obviously I don't want to get into that today, but there's this big giant science component to when you cook the onion, that you destroy the compounds that could be potentially toxic to the animal. And animals in like Europe and all over the world, because Italy and all Mediterranean countries and Asian countries, like, onions are staples in their cooked and stir-fried foods, and animals have been eating it for a millennia. But that's another story for another time, obviously. But I do love the fact that it was the old ways that really where you can get a lot of science from, you know, even though we think everyone is so fancy here because we have so much science and so on and so forth. Man, go look at how dogs evolved and how they've been eating for thousands and thousands of years on the other side of the world.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I have one of my best friends. She lives in the south of France, and they live in a big farm. They have 3 big spaniels. All of them, they're every single day out there in the vineyard eating, you know, like grape leaves. Like, I remember last year we went there for a week, and I said, they can't be eating grapes like that. And she was like, they've done it all their life. They're fine. Don't worry, they're okay. You know, like, the stomach is used to it. Like,
the eternal debate. The eternal debate, grapes.
I was like, as well.
I got to tell you, like, look, there is a component to whether, you know, is it a specific genetic type of grape? Why is it that dogs eat grapes all over the world? By the way, there was a study done by the British Veterinary Journal. It's very easy. Just Google and go to Google Scholar, type grape extract, British Journal, and dogs. And they just published a study. They gave dogs grape extract, like a powerful component, and put it all over the food, and there was no issues with dogs. So it's not to say that there isn't something somewhere in some country where it's a potential problem. But when you travel around the world and you talk to people, grapes are used as a staple in countries, as a treat and a reward program. Meanwhile, here in North America, you know, there's a potential situation and they don't know why it is. So geography, I know, plays a really big part, I believe, in kind of how food production is. There's a reason why so many people who are gluten intolerant or cannot eat pizza here in North America can get on a plane and go to Italy and eat the most delicious pizza and eat the most delicious pasta and pasta and no problems. No problems. No GI issues.
Yeah. And that's it, right? Again, it goes back to the gut microbiome, right? And what we're used to, like, in other countries as well, versus to, you know, like, It's completely different how processed the wheat is that gets to, we buy olive oil every single year. We go
Yes.
to Italy for 3 months. What my dad does is quite funny. He will go to the olive oil field. He watches them picking the olives from the trees. He follows them in the car to get the olives in. And he sends me videos of the whole process every time in October. And he's like, how many liters do you want this year? I'm like, I just want 25. And he's like, okay, cool. I'll just make sure you have it when you get to Italy. And he's just like, then you go to a supermarket here and it looks like the olive oil that you put in cars, like to the car, right? Not the olive oil for cars, but the oil that you would put in cars.
Of course. It's so watered down, no color.
Yes.
My mother just got back from Lebanon, and they her entire backyard is olives, and they just literally, they come back with tanks of olive oil. I've always put olive oil in my dog's food. I've always known it's been the fountain of youth. I like the polyphenols in the olive oil, the melatonin in the olive oil. It is literally, when you talk to many people, especially in the old countries, they will tell you the fountain of youth comes from olive oil. And so we knew very on. There are studies out there that show that olive oil is obviously safe for dogs and cats, and obviously moderation, variation, and balance. We're not talking about, there's always those people that have to do the extremity of things. But man, olive oil is... I long for more research. I really do long for more research and long-term studies on olive oil. It's just going to take a company that wants to put the money and the research into it. They usually, in the studies that you see for olive oils and cats today, in fact, there was a new article published in the pet food industry talking about olive oil for cats and it being more palatable. In other words, cats enjoyed their food better when olive oil was added to it. In a recent article published in the pet food industry. So it's just more used as a carrier in studies. So you'll see or in a placebo where we gave them CBD and then we gave them olive oil and we wanted to see if the owners, saw the same benefits, but nobody's actually taken the time to put enough longevity research into the feeding of olive oil, which is unbelievable.
And just spending the money on it as well, which is so frustrating, isn't it? Because, it's some kind of of the things are oh, but that's common sense.
Yes.
In so many different areas.
Yes.
But then you have, kind of you're always in the middle of two sides, right? It's common sense and what's the science and the current, how currently things are done and produced and how for how many years and things like that. But if we leave down the side from your TED Talk, I want to share, we were talking about your TED Talk, right? And moving into longevity, what I absolutely loved and I remember really well about that TED Talk is three things, right? One was when you talked about Sammy's story and Sammy was just diagnosed with cancer. Oh, by the way, is that Shuby?
This is Shuby.
Shuby?
It's a weird word. So the word Shuby comes from my local dog park, which has been for Sam and my beautiful boy Reggie. It's the most heavenly playground in the world. If you ever come to Nova Scotia, I'm going to show you Shuby Park. And I'm sitting, I was just sitting in the shower one day and I was like, what is the most precious thing in the world to my dogs? It's Shuby Park. So she's the dog on the little husky there. She comes from up north on the cover of the Forever Dog book. So she's almost 14. So she's a teenager.
She's almost 14 because I remember you mentioned that on your TED Talk, right?
Yes.
She was a baby. I think she was maybe 4 or something like that.
It's so crazy, right? I can't believe how that was 2000. How long was it? 2015? It's 10 years ago. So she would have been 4. You're You're exactly right. Yeah, she's and she looks phenomenal. She looks phenomenal.
And she looks really healthy as well.
Yeah.
Which is good.
She's my little forever dog, that's for sure.
I love that. I actually love that. It's your soul dog. I mean, you had 3 soul dogs, but I have 1. But yeah. Yeah, and this is the thing, isn't it? You shared about Sammy's story, and then obviously you shared about the implication of ultra-processed food. That's the thing that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
And the percentage of cancers and in dogs, right? And how that really impacted the lifespan of the dog overall. And so the first question I wanted to ask you really is, what's in the last 10 years, right? Since that talk you've done, what's changed?
Oh gosh, what hasn't changed, right? I mean, so that's a loaded question, because you could name one thing and I could tell you how it's changed. I mean, one of the things that stuck with me, obviously due to that TED Talk, in 2022, which if you flashed forward, let's just say 7 years later, when you look at the average lifespans of dogs, I'll send you, I could send you a screen capture. In the British Journal, they published the lifespan of animals. And I've got it actually here on my phone. I can text it to you later. So if you want to flash it on the screen, but there was a study that came out showing about like the average lifespans of dogs. And you're not going to be able to see this on my camera. It's just going to be too darn bright, but let's just pretend we can flash it on the screen. So the new study shows that the life expectancy of some popular dogs, the French Bulldog, 4.53 years to be exact. I mean, that is ridiculous. Like, what are we talking about? The number one dog that took out the Labrador Retriever in terms of most popular dogs in America that pet parents want is the French Bulldog. And you're telling me that in the United Kingdom, you're showing me a study that the average lifespan is 4.5 years? What are we talking about here? The English Bulldog, the Pug, 7.65 years. American Bulldog, 7.79 years. The Chihuahua, 7.91 years. I mean, look, that's changed. I know there's this big argument that dogs are living longer and healthier, and scientists will always rival each other based upon, well, we have better diagnostic techniques today, so we're detecting things faster. Yes, that's absolutely true. But it doesn't explain why in the human world, cancer, when you were in my talk in the UK, I flashed that cancer's up 80% over the last 3 decades with people under 50. Like, cancer rates are rising. Sure, we have drugs to keep you on the planet longer, but you're living in illness, right? So how's your quality of life at that point? And so if cancer rates are rising in the human space, it's a no-brainer what's happening in the pet space, because when you ask the scientists why it's going up, again, the argument about better tools to diagnose, the scientists have factored that out and put that to the side. Diet has changed, environment has changed, the microbiome is changing. So there's many things that have changed since that TED Talk in 2015. And the world is just in a state now where you and I, are more health conscious, and we have to take that information. Like, I feel like it's our duty as citizen scientists to share that information with more and more and more dog owners so they can have that aha moment where they go from a casual dog owner, as I always say, to a 2.0 pet parent, where it's like, oh gosh, I need to learn more.
I completely agree. I feel like the thing that, because I ran a doggy daycare and boarding business for 3 years, and so I was seeing, different dogs every single day. And it's quite interesting because I used to see dogs with allergies, dogs with cancer, dogs with, diabetes, IBS, all different conditions. And one thing that I found in common across these people is like, people are just like 2 things. One is the kind of reactive mindset. And then the second one is for dog owners that have a perfectly healthy dog, unless you are, and we will talk about Pet Parents 2.0 afterwards, unless you are a Pet Parents 2.0, people don't seem that bothered about learning. Oh, it's cancer, it's fine, it's out there, but my dog is fine.
Of course.
And so how do you deal with that?
It's the same thing. So God deals with it. It's the same thing that happens to humans or dogs. Unfortunately, most people don't care until it happens to them. You don't care. Because you can talk, when I have this conversation with my mother or my brother and sister, God, there's cancer everywhere. Don't eat this, microplastics here, glyphosate in this. You and I, and the 2.0 pet parents that are listening to this, it's that accumulative effect. I'm not saying, and you're not saying, eat a treat with red dye number 40, colorful dyes, and your dog is going to die tomorrow morning. But if this is my glass, and eventually my glass, which is my glass of Rishi tea right now, but
yes,
it's going to overflow if I fill it with too much water. So if I take all of the things around me, like microplastics, like glyphosate, like volatile organic compounds, imagine your dog's body, right? We say this all the time, buy a filter or be the filter. So your dog is theoretically the filter to all of these pollutants. And when you don't care, and when you're talking to a first-time pet owner, and there's all of these things in their environment that they're not aware of, and that cup becomes full, and they get a diagnosis that their dog has developed an autoimmune disease or their cat has developed an autoimmune disease, a child in the family has developed an autoimmune disease or has developed cancer, that's when the aha moment hits you, because you have to care, because now you're given a clock, the clock is ticking, and you're only going to be on the planet for so long.
Yeah.
And you know what? That is really when you're like, nothing else matters and your health matters, and you're like, oh my God, my dog is diagnosed with cancer. The number one question you and I and the whole world asks, how much time do I have? And that's when people, unfortunately, start caring and start researching. And then all of us, me, you, and every person listening to this podcast will have probably said to themselves at some point, if I only knew then what I know now. And that's unfortunately the sad reality. I love the pet parents that nothing has happened to their pet. Their pet is extremely healthy, but they just want their pet to be with them for a very long time. And then they start researching. I love those people because they didn't wait till it was usually too late.
Yeah. Yeah, these are the pet parents that take a preventative approach. And what I feel like when I see these kind of people is these are like they would take the same approach to their own health. And so they do that for their own health. And obviously the dog's health will be the exact same thing because
Wasn't that you though, when we were talking earlier, you saw something that inspired you. You didn't have disease, but you said, I want my baby to be with me forever. So you're the person that I love, and I wish that more people in the world could be cut from your cloth, because it didn't take maybe disease. And I don't want to speak on your behalf. I could have this wrong, but I don't think it took disease. I think it took you just wanting to raise a forever dog.
Yeah. He was a baby. He looked at me. Well, I was like crying. You could just see he was really worried. He was like, why are you crying? Because he was a very emotional talk, right? Like it was talking about, you were sharing the story of your own dog. You had to go through that journey. And he was looking at me and I was like, I just want to give you, like, I love this thing more than anything in my life. And I just want to give him what you say all the time, the longest, healthiest and happiest possible life. And I will do whatever it takes in my power to be able to achieve that. And that's when I got into the dog nutrition world, but I wanted to work with dogs. So I opened my doggy. I was working in marketing before, but I opened my doggy daycare. I quit that job because I wanted to learn about dogs. I was like, I need to learn about the problems, the issues out there. I cannot just go into dog nutrition straight away. The amount of things I've learned. And I was doing a podcast yesterday with a senior vet pet. And I was talking about it's a perfect example. I was looking after this collie last December. He was with me for 2 weeks, 13 years old. He was like, collies, right? Throwing a ball, bringing it back, never getting tired.
Yes.
And I was like, that's amazing. 13 years old, going strong. 2 weeks later, I was in Italy. The owner messaged me. We had to put him down. I was like, what? 2 weeks later, he started to have started fainting. He started to have some issue, went to the vet, liver cancer, late stage. There was nothing they could have done. The dog had to be put down. And in my head, I'm like, these little creatures rely on us so much. And, you said it on the talk, right? The only thing they're asking us is to make the right choice for them, whether it's food or whatever, right? But it's in our power to do that.
Of course.
And it's our responsibility to do that as dog parents, as much as you can afford to, because I know budget sometimes is a problem for many people in the world that we live today. But, they can't make a choice themselves. And so you have to be responsible for that and try to do everything in your power to give them what they need to thrive.
So there's a lot of people that would envy that type of death, even though that sounds like a terrible thing, liver cancer, because it's what we highlighted in the first book, which is happy, 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 dead, which is you live this extremely happy, long life. And then that metabolic cliff, they call it, where your body just starts to break down and things happens at the very end, rather than having a dog at like 5 or 6 years old have to go through chronic pain for 7 years of their life and just die, right? Because there's a very big component to genetics where scientists will argue your telomeres, those little shoestring analogy, the end of your shoelaces, that little plastic cap that holds your shoelaces together, those telomeres, there's this argument in science that you can measure from an early stage and know theoretically the year that your animal will pass away in. And I know there's a lot of controversy that surrounds this. So we know that there's a genetic component to that one person that can smoke and drink and do whatever they want and live to be 90, and the other person that's really healthy and then drops dead at 50. There is that genetic component. But we know that if everybody just started smoking and drinking with the hope of living like that guy with 90, that your genes play a role and more people are going to be living in chronic illness for so long. So there's so many people that live today with animals that are chronically suffering at age 4, 5, and 6. And they might live to be 13 as well as the other individual, but those 6 or 7 years that they lived, they were in chronic pain, every type of medication, suffering, cone on their head, and so on and so forth, versus this beautiful dog that lived all the way to 13, playing with a ball and running, and then boom, it hit hit the metabolic point. And so there's a lot of people that would envy that. It's still death. It's still losing your dog. It's still tragic. It doesn't make it any better. But if you had both dogs live those 2 lifespans, I can promise you, if you put 100 million trillion people in a room and you said both dogs are going to live to be 13, this one's going to suffer for 7 years and this one's going to live his best life and then eventually die in a short span, I can tell you what people are going to pick. It's obvious, right?
Of course. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? But the thing is, like, it's how when that happened, right? Because obviously I was through this journey. In my head, I was like, could that have been prevented in any way, shape, or form? Because where we live here in the UK, right, you do not get, and I really mean it, like maybe in the US, or, Canada is different, right? But you do not get that level of care from vets in general. Like you get the usual 15-minute appointment, whatever age your dog is, and that's it. You do a 6 months check, they feel their ribs, make sure they're not overweight or in pain. See you later, we'll see you in 6 months. And that's, for me, is heartbreaking because there are so many, especially when a dog starts getting into their senior years, there are so many things that we should be doing as dog owners and vets should be talking about and offering that I just don't see that here. Like I was talking about, we did a gut microbiome test on Rusty, and the vet nurse looked at me like I was talking another language. And I was like, if that is the biggest thing you can do for your dog, why is it that you are not telling me to do that if he's got constant anal glands problems, for example? And, no wonder like the owners don't,
Yeah. So here's where I, like you, was full of piss and fire when I first started. And I'd be angry with my veterinarian for not knowing the things that I believed in my heart that they should know, right? Because obviously you want these beautiful doctors to know absolutely about everything. But when I was younger and my dog was sick, and why did nobody pick up on it? And why did they tell me my dog only had 3 months to live when they had cancer? And so on and so forth. I have over the years learned that my approach was not the best approach in terms of inspiring everybody. How can I inspire my veterinarian to want to know more and learn more, and especially pertaining to microbiology, if I attack my vet versus trying to inspire my vet, right? Because if the dream for you and me, Gaia, is for our doctors to be coaches on our team, right? So here's your dog, and then there's me and you, and we want this dog to live forever. And then and just like a soccer team, like a football team, okay? Viva l'Italia, the football team over in Italy. Gosh, so much competition right now. I'm sure I'm going to light up the comment section. But
in the comments,
right? You have a coach, you have assistant coaches, and then you have players and so on and so forth. You and me, if we have a dog, for our journey for longevity, my veterinarian down the road, it's so important to me because he's a coach on my team to get my dog to live a very long time. And just like my family doctor that I would go to if I happen to burn my face with hydrochloric acid, he may send me to the hospital, right? Because he knows as much as he knows, and then he's going to be like, I got to send you to a specialist, right? So we can't expect GPs, general practitioners in the human space, and our beautiful veterinarians to know absolutely everything, but we can inspire them to look into things. And years ago, we'd be like, man, my vet knows nothing. Why didn't he know this? Why can't you be like Dr. Karen Becker? When I watch her video, she knows everything. Why can't you? That was a really wrong approach for me. And what all it did was as my name started to grow throughout social media, you then attributed me to be like a vet basher. And then you just said he doesn't like vets. And then what it did was it created a stake. So then if I got to sit with the scientists and they gave me some incredible information that's going to inspire my vet down the road, he's not going to listen to it because he thinks like I'm a vet basher because I was bashing my vet for so long and like, why doesn't everybody know? And I could never inspire him to want to know more about it. I changed as I started to grow quickly because of social media in its early infancy. I realized, hey man, do I want to inspire the world or do I just want to inspire pet parents? And I took a different approach. So then when I started to go to vet schools and I started to speak at vet schools and I started to create content and then vets started sharing my content, then it became, okay, well then it's the holistic vet world versus the conventional vet world. So now so if I was sharing content, integrative and holistic veterinarians would share my content, but the conventional vets would be like, well, now you hate conventional vets. So you're only on this side. So it was like, no, how am I going to bring all of this together to show people, here's the science, I want to inspire you, the veterinarian. I want to inspire you, the pet parent. And I want us to all grow and learn and get research to move faster, like spaying and neutering, which is a very controversial topic. How do I get more people to talk about it? How do we all talk about it? So then when you visit the clinic down the road, they're going to start to do vasectomies and hysterectomies, ovary spares and vasectomies. Sorry.
Yeah.
How am I going to inspire my clinic to do that? I've got to get us all to understand, like, to all be on the same page that we all want to move faster. We want to try to inspire as many people as we can. And I understand that there's going to be those people that just don't like us because whether it's your face, whether it's the sound of your voice, whether it's how you laugh, whether it's how you tell jokes, that's human nature. That's human nature. Yeah. But I think when more people understand what you're trying to do, and today when I try to go into labs and places and clinics, and I just went to the University of Tennessee, the vet school, and then I just went to Georgia, the vet school there, and you get to start visiting these people. I love this saying, you can't hate someone up close. It's really hard to hate somebody up close.
Yeah.
So imagine that person that you don't like, and then they lock you two in a room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you start talking and you get a better understanding of where people are at. Well, I didn't like you because I thought you were very aggressive here, or I thought you were very aggressive when you did this. Yeah, it makes it hard to communicate. But I think we as people, a lot of us, there's, especially dogs help break down any barrier, because the one thing that we can all relate with before we even start talking to each other. So if you have a whole bunch of people that love the Italy football team, and then you have Alemania, Germany, and Italy and Germany when they play in football, and the rivalry that can happen there.
Yeah.
If we start talking about football, you and I can punch each other. But if we start talking about dogs, and we both love dogs,
love comes out within
right?
seconds.
Love just starts coming out of your heart, and it's easier to relate with people.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely agree. I think like it's an interesting topic because like my kind of like how I see it, right? We are, and what I hear from dog owners, right? Like the reason I started DAFY is a year ago, I did a survey where I was asking people, what is your biggest kind of frustration with the information out there about dog health and nutrition? 500 people filled in that survey, and the most kind of common answer I was getting in that survey was, I'm so sick and tired of the conflicting and confusing advice out there on dog health and nutrition. My dog has got arthritis. I go to this group, I get told something. I go to this other group, they say completely different advice. I go to the vet, they're telling me do this. And so I was like, it's a good point, because that's kind of like, in a way, what I experienced when Rusty was a puppy. And I listened to you and I loved that TED talk. But then, you go back to your vet and they're like, no, raw feeding, are you mad? You can't do that. And it's so dog owners are just in the middle of that. So what I'm trying to do is kind of like, every time I talk to anyone, I'm like, if I was a dog owner, what will I ask? What questions will I ask? And, what's your view on that, on all the confusing and conflicting information that are out there from a dog owner's perspective?
Yeah. And so I always attribute it to life. I mean, always before I start my talk, I'll always refer to people. I started referencing this early on, probably like 2010, 15 years ago, before I started anything. I would just say to people, religion and politics and nutrition, three of the most visceral things in the entire world that countries will go to war over, right? I mean, look at the wars that are happening around the world. It's religion. And if it's not religion, it's politically related. And nutrition is no different, right? So how do you talk to so many different people and try to relay a message across? So for starters, when you say the word raw food, when you say lightly cooked, when you say freeze-dried, when you say air-dried, when you say baked, when you say pathogen controlled or pasteurized, when you say canned, I keep going, semi-moist, I'll stop. All of these are different types of feeding regimes and different types of food processing categories that people will swear by, will create a Facebook group about, will have philosophies about, whether you're a veterinarian, whether you're a dog trainer, doesn't matter what you are. You were there when my awesome friend Connor Brady came on before me and at the talk and said, don't feed vegetables. Yes. And meanwhile, I come out and then I show you all the different science, right? Like, how can two guys that are really good friends have two different polar views on food? But it would be no different than if I was to ask you, how do you eat and how do I eat? whether I'm vegetarian and so everybody is entitled to their opinion, and everybody knows something that you don't know. So you have to be open in terms of like, what is the type of conversation that we want to talk about? I used to will say raw food is the best. I will no longer say lightly cook is the best. What I try to do is try to talk about basics, because if you look in the human space, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, carnivore, Mediterranean diet, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. All of the experts will say the same thing. Eat minimally processed food and avoid ultra processed food. And then everything under that is where the war starts, right? So we try to be up here as pet owners, right? Like, so let's start and have a common conversation. Let's have a conversation that your mom and my mom and their moms have told us for a million years. Eat as much minimally processed food as possible and avoid ultra processed food, aka junk food, right? I mean, so our parents told us that. So we can argue with our parents, but everything below that is where the minutia starts. And I try not to go down there, because for me, in terms of the longest lived dogs in the world, okay, well, let's go visit the longest lived dogs in the world. Or how did dogs evolutionarily eat? We have fossilized we have fossilized poop, for God's sakes, that can tell us how dogs exactly ate. And then, so we can follow history and we can follow science and we can follow evolution. Some people like to go even further, because we know that arguably anywhere between 15,000 to 30,000, there's that argument, the dog was born. No one knows how. We know that somehow they evolved from the wolf, but there's all of these debates. Did the wolf come down, hang around man's camp, eat man's garbage, develop the gene to be able to digest starch, and then he became a dog, which is basically a brand new type of being, right? So if the dog is only 15 to 30,000 years old, there's these arguments still within there. How was the dog eating? How did they evolve? And so on and so forth. So it's always these fine arguments where ultimately all of us care about one thing, though. If you took all of these people who have all of these different philosophies in how dogs should be eating and how humans should be eating, it's all the same goal. We just want to live forever and we want to live healthy. And that is kind of where I like to play, would be up here. And if I was a 2.0 pet parent and I was a pet parent listening to this today, you're going to get every single person in the world telling you how the best way for your dog is eat, how your dog should eat. If I line up 1 million veterinarians and 1 million scientists, all of them are going to have different opinions. However, if we say, should the food be ultra processed or minimally processed, anybody that knows anything about nutrition and science, and I'm not trying to insult the ultra processed food people, because some people just don't have, because of money restriction and so on and so forth. But I think if we had the choice, I don't know who on earth would argue that ultra processed food is equal to minimally processed food. I just don't know.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? Why do you think, again, that's just me with my experience with all the dogs I've looked after over time. Like we have, you go into a vet clinic, they have loads of, especially like conventional vets, kibble is played in their practice. And obviously, that's the training they get. They go to vet school, they get very limited training on nutrition. They don't become vets to become nutritionists. Normally they become vets to help sick animals, right? But then you have loads of dogs, right? They have allergies, IBS, Oh, let's put him on hydrolyzed diet. Let's put him on this diet. And honestly, vets generally believe that these diets are helping these dogs. I believe in the short term, maybe, but yeah. Why is it though that it's still, like, wherever you go, and most vets, right? I think there is a shift and things are starting to change slightly, but still all of these things are displayed there. And what I would used to see with my dog parents is the vet, Right. My dog is itching, is on Apoquel. He needs to try to be on hydrolyzed diet. And that's the reality of it. And that's what dog parents, at least on my side, parents maybe 1.0, they listen to. And the dogs are on this diet for years and years and years. So do you reckon the shift should be we need more nutritionists in like vet practices? Or, what could we have a change that actually can, help a vet?
So this is an awesome question. And this was the question that I spent over a decade of my life asking. The exact question that you asked. So imagine, I've been blessed to be everywhere. I've gone to every type of vet school that you can imagine, all over the world, any type of university, any type of scientist and lab, right? I was just at the Cancer Massey Institute in Virginia, where I got to sit with 2 leading scientists in advanced glycation end products. I've got to sit with Nobel Prize winning scientists for either circadian rhythm or telomeres. I've got to sit with like I've been blessed to be able to sit with the most influential leaders in this space and ask those questions, right? Because you and I, as two pet parents, can ask this question. We could ask this question to a veterinarian. We could ask it to a PhD. We could ask it to somebody board certified. And I got to ask everybody. And all you'll get is different philosophies and answers. But I think there is like a little bit of a common through line here. When I've got to go through colleges and in universities and ask, okay, how does this even start for a veterinarian in terms of selling food? Like, so there's this argument on, should a doctor sell food? So should you be able to go to a human doctor's clinic and they have food there? Because if we had that in the human space, you would see the same problems, right? But it's because it's not there. But we can't take that away from the veterinarians, God love them, because it's a source of revenue. We know that right now vets are struggling. People are complaining that prices are too high. But what's really more important, this was a statistic last year in speaking with the Vet Association, you have 2,400 vets that retire a year, but only 2,000 that go to school to become a vet. That's a really big problem because we have more dogs and more cats than ever, but we have less people wanting to go to vet school. So that's a problem. That means that there's going to be this big gap for you and I 10 years from now. We're not going to be able to find a vet. So that's a really big problem. When you talk to people within the schooling systems, they'll tell you that, ultra-processed food manufacturers, the day that young veterinarians enter the school, not my words, theirs, are given free food from the ultra-processed food manufacturer. Now, imagine you're a student with a massive student loan, and here's a company that's saying, I'm scientifically formulated, and I'm going to comp you your food. My gosh, it's free food for your animal, right? Imagine being a rescue, and you've got 800 dogs in your rescue. This is just a fictitious number, but imagine. And then I say to you, now go and feed all your dogs raw food. How are you going to do that? If I'm an ultra-processed food manufacturer and I come to you and I say, I'm going to give you all the food for free, just tell people to feed my food. What are you going to pick? Are you going to starve the dogs, right? Because you can't afford that. Or are you going to choose the ultra-processed food and be like, thank God they're just eating something. At least there's food in the bowl and they're eating, right? So there's a lot of these little arguments that happen that right from the start, you start to understand, okay, I see what's happening here, right? Like put yourself into the mind of the young student. You can't even, you're eating Mr. Noodles every day, man. You're like getting up, you open the fridge, there might be like one carrot in the fridge as a student and you're in school. And you want me to go out and buy a $125 bag of food when here's a big company within a university that's going to give me my food for free? It's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. Okay, so then you then at a young age, you've now primed them that ultra-processed food. Look, your dog's eating it. He looks fine and so on and so forth. So you can see there's no problem here. So that's one step that when you come out of vet school, you've already been primed that, hey, I feed my dog ultra-processed food. He was fine. He seems to be healthy. So I don't see it being a problem. Okay, so there's step one. Now you get it. There's many other steps. This is a very long question. And obviously I'm a long-winded guy because I got to give you all the different explanations and I can burn a podcast with one friggin' question. So now you come into your clinic and there are these type of foods. Every day published in Nature, the Cadillac of journals, somebody will do a test in some certain country, the most recent that came out of Turkey, where they test pet foods and they find excessive heavy metals in the foods. The foods aren't balanced properly. They're not what they say on the label. You might have a dog with a chicken sensitivity. You go in to buy fish from a store, a fish-based kibble product, but it's got fish and pork and beef and everything because no one cleaned the machine when they made the foods. So then now you bring your dog, like you said, over to your veterinarian. He's got a dog with an allergy. Obviously, you can reach for Apoquel. But the challenge is this poor veterinarian, I don't know the type of kibble that you're feeding. I know that this company over here, whether it's Hill's Science Diet made by Colgate-Palmolive, whether it's Purina Vet Care, which is made by Nestle, or whether it's Royal Canin, which is made by Mars, right? So these big conglomerate groups, they can come to the vet and they can promise, hey, we clean our machines. We can tell you that if this protein is in there, it's only that protein. If Gaia goes out and she buys from a random company from a boutique store and she has an animal with kidney problems, and now Gaia is concerned about the amount of phosphorus that's in her diet. So she goes to the pet store and the pet store is like, well, they don't really make the diets here for phosphorus, but you could do a couple tweaks and so on and so forth. When you go to the vet doesn't know what the pet store is selling and he has no idea what the phosphorus levels are, but he knows that he has a bag of ultra-processed food behind him. Even you're still feeding ultra-processed food, right? Like you're still going to the pet store and feeding it. Not you per se, but most people that walk in. But now he's got a guarantee from a company that says, hey, we've lowered the phosphorus in this food. We've modulated it and it will take pressure off the kidneys. So what would you do if you were a veterinarian? right? It's different. It's a different question if you were going in as a raw feeder and then I offer you a bag of low phosphorus in the back if you had an animal with a kidney issue. I understand. There's many ways that you could counter my argument, but I'm just trying to keep it very vague for you. If you can just think outside of the box for the moment and you can see the issues, it's not until you sit down with all of these incredible veterinarians or these PhDs or these board certified people in specific categories and you hear their problems, you understand why they're kind of in that bubble, right? Like, where is the company that's supposed to come out and produce minimally processed science-based foods at an affordable price and put them all through clinics? Well, there is nobody.
No.
There's nobody. So they have a dilemma. But one thing I can tell you, this last round that Dr. Becker and the incredible B. Adams and myself, all the vet schools that we visit along the East Coast, and now we're heading to the West Coast, the conversations today, Gaia, are so different. There is nobody in those universities that aren't saying, we understand that minimally processed foods are better. We just need them to be balanced and we need them to be formulated properly. And we just can't find anyone that's doing that.
Yes. It's so true, isn't it? That is literally so true. They don't know how to do it, but they start saying, whilst I'm in vet school, I'm going to learn the right way and I'm going to learn from the right people. And I love that because I'm going to say, like, since Rusty was a puppy to now, there are a lot more vets open to have the conversation.
Isn't there?
A lot more vets that will tell you, well, if your dog is thriving on a diet, you know, as long as you know, like, let's say you're feeding raw, as long as you know that there are some risks feeding raw food, but if your dog is really well, every dog is different. I'm happy for you to just continue to feed them what you feed. And I would have never got an answer like that 20 years ago.
I don't want to cut you off. God bless your mouth. No, that is exactly right. It is changing. Times are changing, right? There was a study that came out from the British Journal said that 95% of vets had at least a client that was feeding raw food. Like, it's not a fad. And it's not that raw food is, like you said, this is another question that you and I could, a debate that we could go on, which is not all raw foods are created equal, which is what the biggest problem is, because it's such a broad term. Now they're going to change that. In the United States, they are now pushing for new legal definitions, and it's going to make it over to FEDIF in Europe for they're going to call it RAMP. So it's a new term, a new technology where they can say, how can I take raw food A that's balanced, formulated properly, let's just say pathogen controlled and safe, versus the guy down the road here in Nova Scotia in Canada, they'll go shoot deer, they cut it up, they throw vegetables on top of it, and then you go to a local parking lot and they'll sell it to you from the back of the trunk in a box.
Yes.
You don't know what the hell's in that, right? But it's online. They'll sell it on the local, like Amazon, it's not Amazon, but like the local co-op third-party selling platforms where it's like, hey, meet me in the parking lot and I'll sell you raw food for 99 cents. Why would you go buy it from Gaia at $10? But it all falls under raw food. And it drives your vet crazy because now he doesn't know, like, where he doesn't even have time, because when you come in, you only have an hour with the vet and he's got 10,000 people waiting out there. How's he going to have that conversation with you when that definition is so wide? So the problem is, let's fix the definition, because then that's going to help so many people. But I'm sorry, I cut you off, and you are totally right. The conversation today in a vet clinic is a lot different, I can promise you, than the conversation 10 years ago. Your vet is telling you two different things today because he's also learning faster.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. But the raw food, that thing that you mentioned just now about the raw food, that is something I learned recently as well in the last couple of years, because I was like so determined, I'm going to make my own raw food for Rusty. I mean, Rusty's always been pretty much the last 4 years on a raw diet. He's done really well. He's been on gently cooked as well. But I was like, I want to cook for him. And then very quickly I've learned, well, I was going to my local butcher and just getting like bits and pieces and things like that. I was working with ADF, animal diet formulator. But then I was like, it's just basically impossible for me to just do that very successfully, where A, I don't know where the meat is coming from. B, that meat is not meant to be it's meant to be cooked. It's for human consumption. And so that I completely shifted my kind of mindset around, raw food is all about the company. It's all about the questions that you ask that raw food company to really make sure they are testing for bacterial and pathogenic bacterial infection. They are formulating. Who is behind the formulation? How often do you do like a digestibility trials? Where do you source your meat from? All of these things together make me feel confident what I feed him now. And I think that's it. That's what we really need to do when we're thinking about raw food, because it can be dangerous if, like you said, right, you just go round the corner, someone that just killed a deer and just selling it to you, and then you feed it to your dog. The reality is, nowadays, the gut microbiome of dogs in the world that we live in is so toxic,
Oh,
that I am not surprised that some dogs just can't tolerate it very well and they get sick from it, you know?
it's so bad. It's so bad now that, like, if you, as an example,
Yeah.
do a couple rounds of antibiotics, or give your dog a couple rounds of antibiotics. Don't give your dog a couple rounds of antibiotics, but imagine a dog has had a couple rounds of antibiotics. I talked to PhD microbiologist Dr. Holly Gantz, arguably one of America's foremost microbiologists. You can, through multiple use of antibiotics, you can develop E. coli in the microbiome, Escherichia shigella. And according to the New York State Department of Health, they produce what are called Shiga toxins, lipopolysaccharide endotoxin production in the microbiome, gases, harmful gases, so on and so forth. Now, if you put E. coli on raw meat, let's say the raw meat's clean, it's perfectly fine raw meat. You go and throw E. coli on raw meat, it is going to thrive in that environment. So the reason why these poor people have these terrible experiences with raw food, like the worst, I got to rush them to the emergency. He almost died. There was blood coming out of his back end. It's because the environment wasn't right before they went and introduced minimally processed foods into the microbiome. It doesn't matter if it's raw or lightly cooked. Sure, there can be a bigger reaction with raw, but it can happen with lightly cooked. I've had a lot of companies that I've sat down with lightly cooked diets because it's still minimally processed, and you fire that into a belly full of E. coli that you didn't know, you're going to have the worst experience in the world. And then you turn around, you feed ultra processed food, you go to your vet clinic, they get a gastro diet, and there's more success because that food is so damn sterile that it was able to calm the environment. And now there's the argument, well, ultra processed food is better than minimally processed food, right? It's like, so God bless your mouth. The microbiome today is so impacted that if you're a 2.0 pet parent and you don't look in the landscape first before you start tinkering with diets, it can really bite you in the butt very quickly. It's like going to your garden and buying a whole bunch of seeds and not testing the soil and throwing all the seeds in the garden and getting up like the next day. That's too quick. Getting up the next month and nothing has grown in the garden because you didn't look at the climate of the soil before you decided to plant all of these seeds. You have to have a clean soil base if you're planning on bringing in a whole bunch of seeds. In other words, you have to have a good environment in the microbiome before you start tinkering around with all of these diets because it can bite you in the butt.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And actually, you talking about gut microbiome, how, again, last couple of years, I realized how important it is. I knew it was, but like you really do not, unless you get lots of educations behind it. And that's another thing I kind of struggle with a little bit is, again, lots of dogs with allergies that I looked after. Trying to talk to dog owners about the gut microbiome, because obviously you go to the vet, they're not really trained yet. Like it's getting better, but not yet. Like when I did Rusty's, health check, I said, oh, I've done a gut microbiome test. Oh, that's great. Obviously, they don't really they're not trained. They're not really that interested in it.
Of course. But that would be like going to your family doctor and saying, I'm doing a microbiome test, and you're not talking to a gastroenterologist. You'd be like, that's awesome.
That's a very good point. Yes, of course, you're not going to the specialist. So how do we tell dog owners, like in very simple, plain words, why and how often should we looking after a dog's gut microbiome?
So you have the most incredible scientists in the entire world in the United Kingdom, who I hope to sit down with again. Dr. Tim Spector, top 100 scientists of the world. If you're over 700 published papers behind the man's name, if you say to people, who's the world's top microbiologist? Well, then go talk to the world's top microbiologist, right? Not Rodney and Gaia that are going to philosophize on how to build the best microbiome. We can do that, and that's okay. But if you sit with the people whose life is the microbiome, you're going to get a whole different conversation. So very early on, when I flew to King's College and I got to sit with Dr. Tim Spector, he was very clear with me. Imagine 2017, our first time sitting down, he was talking to me about the diversity of the microbiome. That can seem very weird for people because the microbiome, when you're talking about bacteria and you're telling somebody a diversity of bacteria, that can scare the life out of people. They're like, you're trained that bacteria is bad. So what do you mean a diversity of bacteria? I don't want to do that for my pet. When you look at, and I've said this before, when you look at the people, the longest lived people in the world, those super centenarians, they always have a more diverse microbiome than the common North American, right? When you look at dogs who seem to be the longest lived dogs, when you send analysis and samples to microbiology labs, they always have a double diversity than a regular dog. They always have an intact microbiome. They don't have dysbiosis and so on and so forth. So testing your dog's microbiome is so critical because just the same way, Gaia, that you and I can process fat differently. So my parents are Mediterranean. You'd think we can eat all of the oil in the world. You would think. Mom is missing the gene to process fat properly. And she got it from her mother, and she gave it to me, and she gave it to my sister. So I love olive oil. And I'm Mediterranean for the love of God. Look at the color of my skin. Who better to be able to eat olive oil than me and you? It's embarrassing to say I eat olive oil. It makes my stomach feel funny. But genetically, I'm missing the gene to process fat properly. My mother, her mother, and her mother all had their gallbladders removed. Thank God my mother didn't. Let me just preface that. They had their gallbladders removed from the amount of fat and olive oil they used to consume. Okay, but they didn't know that they were missing the gene that they couldn't process fat properly. Introduced Dr. Karen Becker, who came to my house. We were filming. My mother was about to go get her gallbladder removed, and Dr. Becker said, wait, took out some gallbladder enzymes with ox bile and said, take these instead before you eat your olive oil rather than having to go remove your gallbladder. And here we are. I don't know, 5 years later, and my mother's thriving with her gallbladder, and because she had gallbladder enzymes. What does that tell you? That tells you that genetically she's different because she's missing the gene to process fat, which then says not all diets everybody can thrive on because of your genetics, how God set you up, right? So the dog down the road could thrive on a certain diet, but then my dog tries that diet and he's an absolute disaster. Microbiome aside, that's his genetics. So we know that today medicine is tailored specifically for people, and it's no different than for dogs. And we know with dogs that there's going to be specific diets they're going to thrive on if we can fall under the minimally processed hood, which would be the same way. But a microbiome test is your one quick way of validating how your dog is doing on that specific diet and if that microbiome is diverse and if it's thriving. Because when you look at your dog, even though they've got glowing eyes and shiny teeth and a beautiful coat of hair, there could be something in there that is brewing that is going to come up and it's going to shock you pretty quick that you don't know that's happening and that you're going to be shocked by in the future, where a simple microbiome test is one of many different tests that you could do that give you an early sign of, am I on the right diet? If somebody tells you stop feeding vegetables to your dog, be carnivore, right? I mean, it's the same thing in the human space. For the love of God, people are arguing that broccoli is going to kill you because of sulforaphane. So they just say, just eat meat and fat. Don't eat. Okay, sure. No problem. I'm not going to argue it. There's some people that have tried those diets and done well, but just test. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to the guy down the road. Just test. Try the diet. And if you think your dog is thriving on it, you can have that brief honeymoon period. And that honeymoon period arguably can last 1 to 4 years where you think your dog is thriving, but deep down inside something bad is brewing. Just test. It'll tell you very quickly how your dog is doing on diet A or diet B.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm the living proof of that because we did a microbiome test on Rusty 6 months ago. And, just imagine, right? Raw fed. There is no spraying anything anywhere around us, everything you could think of. I am very mad and I don't care. But he had 60%, I think it's called Prevotella, the bacteria of relevance in his gut. And I was like, what? It just shows. Could it be some kind of antibiotic that he had, at some point in his life? It could be anything. But I would have not had a clue if I didn't do that test. And I wouldn't been able to make any changes if I didn't do that test. So even exactly what you said, I thought he was going to be he's always been super healthy. It's never sick. Doesn't have infections ever. But it's even like that. It's what's going on in the inside, you don't know.
So Prevotella, according to scientists, is the bacteria that helps digest simple carbohydrates. In other words, starches, right? Or refined starches. They're present in moderate amounts in most healthy dogs, but when they become too abundant, in your case, they're associated with unhealthy levels of inflammation, and they can play a role in chronic conditions like inflammatory bowel disease. But how would you have known that if you didn't test, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
This is that argument where if you want to argue food philosophies, man, genetics plays such an impactful role. You would be foolish to say that the same diet can benefit everybody. I'm not going to argue ultra processed and minimally processed. No question. If it's minimally processed, so many different dogs will benefit from that wide array of different types of foods, lightly cooked, raw, pathogen controlled raw, freeze dried. There's so many categories of minimally processed foods where your animal could potentially thrive on, but it's minutia to say that one diet is going to be the best for everybody.
Yes, I completely agree. every dog is different. That's also what I'm learning, is every dog is different. And yes, I agree with your arguments, right? Like ultra processed versus not ultra processed. That for me is the way I live my life, right? But I have seen some dogs doing really well on specific food that if I would put my Rusty on it, it would not. And I know that because I've seen it, like he's in like one month and he starts getting ears infections, eye infections, and it's like his leg is limping every now and then. It's never happened, but it is completely true. And that's why I think also that's where the complexity comes from. Because you go to a Facebook group, right? I want to feed my dog raw food. And then someone says, no, my dog got sick from it. No, you shouldn't do that. Or I want to feed this kid, but no, you're going to kill your dog. The reality of it is every dog is different. And the advice should only be taken by, people that, who know what they're talking about, people that have studied it for years and, not just anyone. Yeah.
Gaia, how many times, is there a certain food that you could just think of if I said, pick a food that you eat it and your stomach just feels terrible all day?
Yeah, I actually had a few weeks ago, we've made these homemade puff pastry thing with cashew butter, not butter, but cashew like blended.
Yeah.
And I felt so sick that night.
And do you know what ingredient it was if you had to guess?
I would say the fat.
The fat.
Or the flour from the pastry possibly. But I think mixing the puff pastry with the cashew butter was too much fat.
Yes.
I don't really get bloated with anything else other than when I eat too much fat. But sugar is another one that I feel horrible when I eat sugar now. Horrible.
Do you know what gets me is there's certain seeds that I can't eat. So as a great example, when Dr. Karen Becker comes down here to film, she'll always have raw pumpkin seeds or raw cashews. If I eat, and I love nuts, I can eat them roasted. But if I try raw cashews or raw sunflower seeds, I'm like holding my belly and I'm crunched up on the couch for hours, right?
Yeah.
But I can eat them roasted and I can feel fantastic. Here's this debate of whether, the raw food enthusiasts will be like, all your seeds should be eaten raw. I can soak them and that can help. I can definitely soak them and that can help immensely. But I feel better when they're lightly roasted. This is a great analogy if you have to be somebody that suffers from eating raw seeds versus like lightly roasted. It's a good analogy in terms of these food debates where people are like, well, the food has to be 100% raw, or the lightly cooked people who are like, but I lightly cook it and my dog loves it better because it smells better and he likes his food lightly cooked. Yeah, they're both minimally processed. Why are we arguing over this debate? Go look at the longest lived dogs in the world, right? Every time somebody I now refer to scientists because in the olden days when somebody would call me and say my dog is 20 and then we would go and we would do, we'd start digging in the vet records, you'd find out they were 10, but somehow usually they're they're usually like hand-me-down dogs. Like I adopted it from this person told me he was 10, but really the dog was like 3 or 4. And then the dog lives to be like 14, but then you think he's in his and it's happened to me so much that I've stopped now. Now, if there's a scientist that's going to publish a study or that can confirm that this is a long-lived dog, I'll get on a plane and go fly out. But you find that first, they're all a minimally processed food. That's usually the common through line. I have yet, and it can happen. It can happen. I'm not saying it's not. But a dog that's lived 25 and beyond on ultra-processed food, I have not seen. Have they had some ultra-processed food? Maybe. But primarily ultra-processed food based, I haven't seen it. They're usually minimally processed. They've grown up on farms. They live in a great environment. But what I started seeing, like Bobby is a great example, the 31-year-old dog from Portugal. It's all boiled meat. It was all boiled. They boil everything in Portugal, man. Everything is boiled in Portugal. By the way, in Portugal, they only consume, that entire incredible country only consumes, according to research, 10% of their food is ultra processed. So they eat 90% minimally processed food. Boiling is the least amount of damage that you can do to food. And some foods thrive in a boiling environment, like a tomato, arguably. You boil the tomato, the lycopene goes up, right? So there are some foods, or blueberries, there's an argument to freezing. You freeze the blueberry and then you have certain antioxidants and vitamins that go up. So there's this argument that these light processes that you can put food under can either enhance and or be better. And yeah, I learned very quick that not all the longest lived dogs were raw fed. Some of them were eating lightly cooked foods. But if you look high above at the minimally processed, ultra processed, you see the world a lot easier.
Yes, I love that. I think this is definitely the bigger thing you can do that can be kind of in your control. And I think as well, keeping them lean, I think that for me is a huge one. It's so scary to see how many dogs are overweight nowadays. And I get it, right? It comes from love. The love is impacting how much they live. So I think, yeah, that's the second thing I will say. Like, obesity is so bad. And since you've done that TED talk, it's not changed much. Like, I still see that all the time.
Yeah, it's a really big problem, Gaia, and it's getting worse because of nutritional deficiencies. A lot of people will reference the Purina study that I brought up in a couple of my talks, where they reduced calories by 25% in the lab study, and dogs lived on average almost 1.8 years longer, so almost 2 years longer. What nobody ever references is the fact that Purina modified that diet. That's a hidden gem that people don't know about. When you reduce the calories of ultra processed food, so let's say you take 25% out, the way that ultra processed food is made is that you feed 2 cups and it's going to give you enough vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D, zinc, manganese, the nutrients that you need to sustain life. By reducing 25% of food, by bringing those calories out, okay, great, you're minimizing the calorie intake. But bad, because it's ultra processed, you've now minimized the vitamin C, the vitamin D, the zinc, and the manganese. Purina knew that years ago when they did that study, so they enhanced the food. So although you remove the calories, which is fantastic because there's an argument that caloric reduction, you're going to live longer, it didn't reduce the vitamins and minerals. So then everyone in the world started saying, okay, just start pulling, because we have such an obesity epidemic currently. The bag says feed 2 cups, only feed 1 cup. Okay, but you're creating you're creating a caloric reduction, but you're also reducing the vitamins and minerals and polyphenols and antioxidants that animal could have thrived with. And it becomes a problem. And that's what the problem, this is a conversation that we have with board certified nutritionists and scientists currently. Because we have an obesity epidemic, do we need to start looking at the way that we're formulating foods in terms of, we have a calorie threshold that we're trying to reach, and we have a vitamin mineral threshold that we're trying to reach. And when people are dropping their cups because their dogs are too fat, they're now not giving them enough vitamins and minerals. And so they can shorten their lifespan because they can create a nutritional deficiency.
Yes.
So can we please start making foods more nutrient dense and less calorically dense?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of that's like the 3.0 science conversation that we're trying to have today. Because I take 1 million people that have pudgy animals, they're all underfeeding. They're all reducing the amount of food that the label says, but they're not supplementing back the vitamins and minerals they stripped out. They're reducing the calories, but they're not, and they're creating nutritional deficiencies.
Yeah. And another thing as well is the fact that, and I spoke to you had a podcast with Tina. She was at the event as well, Dr. Tina. Can't remember her surname. She was
Tina Hazard?
Yes, the Dutch vet.
Oh, no, this is somebody. Trina Hazard's a board certified.
She's got the purple vet. I know you did.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you actually interviewed her or not.
No.
Her
and I have DM'd on Instagram a couple of times, but we have yet to meet each other. Would you believe I sat beside her at dinner and I'm so stupid. I was so tired. I didn't realize who I was sitting beside.
Really?
But yes. But I hope to meet her properly one day. Yes, I hope to meet her properly one day and make some cool stuff.
I'll tell her that. Yes. I'm talking to her again next week,
okay,
so I'll tell her that.
Yes.
But she obviously she specializes in nutrition, and one thing she said is, the fact that, currently we have a FEDIAF and AFCO guidelines, but they've always been created based on kibble.
Yes.
So she said, I wish we had feeding guidelines or nutrients guidelines for fresh food, because
we do now.
We do now.
ONR in the United States has started. So tell her that her wish has come true.
Okay.
ONR. Yeah, ONR now is trying to change the standards right across America. It's in its infancy, but it's starting in conversation with the FDA and so on and so forth, where ONR now want to do exactly what she's saying. Not only set a guideline for minimally processed foods, but also set a guideline for calories, right? Because when you are a veterinarian and you're told to feed an X amount of number of calories to a growing dog, how can I feed those calories and not strip the vitamins and minerals from the diet, the conversation you are in having? So ONR is proposing adding more vitamins and minerals and nutrients in there and bringing the caloric count down in minimally processed foods and even in ultra processed foods, and nourish animals to the highest level. Because if I give you those polyphenols, those antioxidants, your vitamins and minerals from whole foods at peak level versus minimum guidelines, now you're providing because we're all genetically designed differently. My omega-3 index and your omega-3 index will be completely different. You could take 2 grams of omega-3 fatty acids and I need 4 grams because of my genetics. Now you're not undernourishing me. How can I get more omega-3 but less calories? And so that's kind of where new science is heading.
I love that. I love that. I completely agree. And I think as well, yes, knowing about how many calories does your dog need per day. There is so much misconception around that, right? Like no one is just, oh, he's saying 300 grams because he's 10 kilos, between 300 and 500 grams, but no one works out like the amount of calories. And so there is a little bit of education to be done there as well, because that also, exactly like you said, right? If actually you work out the weight, the activity level, the nutrient status of your animal, and your animal needs actually 700 calories, and that 500 grams only gives your animal, 500 calories, then, you will be malnourishing your animal involuntarily, because, you're just removing all the nutrients and minerals that were created and formulated based on the amount of grams they said, or how many calories there are in 100 grams of food. So yes, that's the second thing. I think there is good stuff happening there, isn't it? And it's good to see like lots of changes, and it's exciting. We were not in this position like 5 years ago.
No, we were not. No, we're not. And things
right?
are in these conversations that you and I are having, people are very aware. And there's so many conversations right now that are being had. Look, the big conversation today is, and there's a new study published in Nature Medicine. There was this old argument that people would say, well, if ultra processed food is balanced and minimally processed food is balanced, and they're both delivering the same nutrients, then everything is fine. Man, that is such old bullshit type of theory that an ultra processed food manufacturer makes. Science can show you your body responds completely different to an ultra processed food balanced diet versus a minimally processed food balanced diet. Like there are so many different pathways that can be upregulated and downregulated. It's only a madman would say that, but welcome to the ultra processed food marketing campaigns. So what scientists are trying to figure out today is, how do we get less adulterated techniques, like more minimally processed techniques with foods? And ultra processed food manufacturers are moving forward in doing that. You're now watching companies like Mars, who makes obviously chocolate bars, but they also make like Royal Canin, and they make Pedigree. So they make grocery store lines, and they bought Champion here in North America. So they have boutique lines. So imagine these companies now are in your vet clinic, in your boutique stores, and in your grocery stores. They're everywhere. But they're aware that you and I are having this podcast and these conversations and imploring people to feed more minimally processed foods. So now they're buying up minimally processed food companies. So there's a $1 billion merger between Mars and Nom Nom Now, a lightly cooked company. You just watched Colgate-Palmolive, that owns Hills Nutrition, buy a raw food company in Australia. So these companies are aware that we are demanding better of our manufacturers. And if we move our dollar towards, we want more minimally processed foods, guess what the manufacturer is going to do? He's going to make more minimally processed foods for us. So we don't have to have these arguments anymore. We, the people, control the dollar. We, the people, inspire each other with these podcasts, with meeting people in the parks. If we want the dial to move forward, it's easy. We just tell the manufacturer, I'm not going to buy your product for $1. I'll spend a little bit more and I'll buy it minimally processed, but I know that you are going to see your market shares drop, and then you're going to move more towards minimally processed foods.
Yes. No, I completely agree. It's us. We are, and that actually leads me to Pet Parents 2.0, right? Because I'm sure you said that millions of times to people. What is the difference between a Pet Parents 1.0, if we want to call it that way, and a Pet Parent 2.0? Like, what's the definition between the two?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm not a big fan of labeling, and I use the term very lightly. And I know that people are trying to make bad words out there, like all you care about are nutrients. So you're a nutrient person, or you're a nutrientist, or something stupid like that. Or you're a ingredientist because all you care about is ingredients. Or you're a kibble feeder because all you care about is kibble. Like, we're not labeling anybody first and foremost in a derogatory way. What we're trying to say here is, we'll use Rodney as an example. So the light term of a casual pet parent is the one that loves his animal, but he, like you said in the beginning of the podcast, doesn't, there's cancer everywhere. Everything's going to kill you. My dog looks healthy. He's doing great. And I'm buying this ultra processed bag of food and life is good. The casual pet parent. Old Rodney that would watch commercials, see this dog jumping over mountains and, swimming through water. And the commercial tells me, feed this product and your dog is going to look like this. And I'm like, I'm going to buy that product. Or the celebrity mindset now that's happening all over North America, where I'll get a super cool celebrity to hold up this product and smile. And because this super cool celebrity just showed me this product and I like his movies, I'm going to buy that food. That's just old me. I just thought because if a celebrity liked it and he's famous, it has to be good food. It's not because I'm stupid. It's just because that's just how I look at commercials and how I'm influenced. The 2.0 pet parent is you and I. The one who loves his animal knows that it's our duty to take the time to research, to be able to provide the best nutrition, the best environment around our parent, with the mindset of building the best team, having the right veterinarian, having just the right group around you, to raising that long-lived animal, and taking 5 minutes a day just to do a little bit of research. Are blueberries good? Let me go online. Let me go on PubMed. Let me put this in here. Let me do a little bit. I just saw this meme on my post that says broccoli's dangerous for my dog. Do I listen to the meme or do I do a little bit of research, right? Let me put this online and let me see, is broccoli in fact good or bad? What is science or research says? Those seem to be the 2.0 pet parent. It's even deeper than that. I just bought an air freshener. I read online that air fresheners, when you plug them in your house, put out beautiful scents, volatile organic compounds. And I like the smell of it, but are there any health risks? Right? There was just a massive recall on benzene, which is a known genotoxin, which can kill you and your family member, long-term exposure or high-term exposure to benzene. It's not going to hurt you right away in low doses, but an accumulative over time effect can affect people. I'm going to do research there. I just saw an article that lawn fertilizer, when I spray my lawn because I want a beautiful green grass, can uptake cancer. We know, according to scientists, a 70% increase in lymphoma. So the 2.0 pet parent is looking all around his dog. So if my microphone's his dog, there's a 360. There's a 360 perspective on all of the things that potentially be harming my animal through either food or through his environment that I have to be aware of. And I'm going to do my best so that cup doesn't overflow with toxins, because all I can do is my best. If I live in an apartment and there's mold in the walls, I can't control it. I can't control it because I'm on a fixed budget. I'm in the apartment. There's mold on the walls. But as a pet parent, I know that I can invest $20 in a box fan, $10 in a MERV 13 filter, and I can run a DIY air purifier in my house and suck up all that mold to protect me and my dog. So you can only do so much to control your environment, but there's always something that you can do to make it this much better. But it's my duty and your duty to find out what that is.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, because that is kind of like one of the questions I wanted to ask you. What is your top advice for someone that is kind of maybe they think they are a pet parent 1.0 to become a 2.0? That's the answer, isn't it? It's just that one little thing. It's just a little bit of research every day, and no one's perfect.
Nobody.
That's the reality of it. The amount of times I felt so bad when I was realizing and finding things out, like washing powder. I mean, that it's bad, but you don't know how bad it is, and it's really bad. But we used washing powder all the time for our clothes up to 2 years ago. But it's that research, isn't it? You're okay, actually, this is what the research is telling me. These are all the findings. These are all the things that thing causes. I'm going to make that change. Candles. I loved candles before. Now I just get beeswax candles, or stuff that really natural stuff, and then just put a little bit of essential oils and things like that. That's it. You can still have all of that. And that's what you kind of covered in your book, isn't it? That came out last year. It's just, how do you do it practically? And I love that book so much, because I feel like people didn't really know how to, and now they do, and it's amazing.
Thank you. And
you're welcome.
You're right. I did a podcast with a trainer recently, and he said something to me that I never really thought of. And he told me, scents are nostalgic. So as an example, if I smell Old Spice cologne, I don't know if you have Old Spice in the UK, but if I smell Old Spice cologne, it reminds me of my grandfather or my grandmother, who uses, we have a cleaner here called Pine Sol. It has this pine smell that she would always put on the floors. But when I smelt it, it made me think of my grandmother. So I would buy Pine Sol. I never really thought about the nostalgia behind things and why we purchase the way they do, because it reminds us of loved ones or the way that our parents fed us. I sympathize for those people that have lost their mothers, that don't have a mother, but they can remember when their mother did this or did that, and it reminds them of it. So there is something to happiness, right? How I had to learn it was Pine Sol that reminds me of my grandmother that I love with all of my heart. She's trying to get emotional. The Pine Sol reminded me of her. But then I realized that the chemicals, the volatile organic compounds that were in the cleaners that my dogs would walk through, because if I mop my floors, where does that cleaner go? Because we automatically assume once it dries, it's gone. Well, no, it's just dried onto the ground, and the animal will track through it. And according to the environmental working group, these cleaners that we have in our homes are being absorbed through the pads, or they're sticking on the fur of the animal's licking it, and it's accumulating into the body. And we have multiple studies to show that if you could just take a urine sample from your pet and send it off to a lab, you would be shocked the cleaners that you find in your home. I love my grandmother, and I love my dog Shubi with all of my heart. So I can find other things that can remind me of her, and I have to break the nostalgia of smelling the pine salt to think of my grandmother, because I want my dog to be with me forever. And when he said that to me, Gaia, I always want to get into people's minds to see how they think, right? Because I don't think that people are wrong when they tell you something. They can be wrong, but their intent behind it, they believe it with their heart. So I try to figure out why do you think like that? And what does research and science say? And can I do my duty in inspiring you to have a conversation, right, about this? So yeah, nostalgia, when you start to realize nostalgia plays a role, you start to understand why people's purchasing behaviors.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, whilst you were saying that, mine is with my grandma, she passed away as well, was Marsil soap. In Italy, because the laundry, we always used to be done with these hard soaps, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
And that was everywhere when I was little. And there is like a particular brand that I used to always bring back from Italy to wash clothes. And because that reminded me so much. So I agree. It's so true, isn't it? It is linked to that, emotional connection that you had with someone you loved. But yes, and then how do you break that to, make sure you don't harm who you have around you right now? And that's beautiful, isn't it? That realization.
It makes you, it definitely always puts things in perspective, and it's changing people's perception. And, we started this conversation with the first TED Talk that you watched that I was blessed to be able to present. And it was big for me there to change perception. And I learned it from one of your UK, here in Canada, he's very famous at that time, Jamie Oliver. And when he was in the schooling systems and he would try to change the perception of children, his imagery is what actually impacted me, when he would show signs of green peppers, but kids didn't know what it was. And then he would show a hamburger and all the kids said, "That's a hamburger," right? It's the same thing with pet food. Like if you showed a bowl of kibble to a whole bunch of children, they would all be like, "Oh my God, that's dog food, that's cat food," right? Because that was the perception as a child that we saw from our parents, if you were of the last few decades, of that's what food had to look like. So then my brain would be like, how do I change Gaia's perception of food, right? Because if I show her a bowl of fresh vegetables, fresh meats, legumes, grains, there's going to be an argument there. Spices, herbs, there's probably going to be an argument there. But if I showed you whole foods in a bowl, are you going to look at that and be like, "Oh my God, that's human food and that's dangerous"? But if I showed you a bowl of ultra processed food, you'd be like, "Okay, that's safe. That's normal. That was made in a lab." So it was really hard back then, 10 years ago, to be able to show people in Canada, United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, those big English-speaking nations, what food used to look like versus what it looks like today, and to change your perception. So if you saw a bowl of Whole Foods, you're like, "Oh, that's just food. It's not human food," or it's like, you know what I mean? But it's just food.
It's the reality. Yeah, it's the normality. It's yeah.
Yeah, because in Italy, it's just food. Nobody in Italy is saying that's human food, that's dog food. And arguably maybe one or two people, but the majority of Italy, that's food, right? And so in all parts of Europe, that's food. It was never segregated, but very cleverly in North America and in English-speaking places, the ultra-processed food manufacturer changed the perception of people very quickly. Why is it when you buy a feed store, and let's say you have chickens, and you're going to go buy, you're not buying chicken food, you're buying chicken feed, right? It's on the package, chicken feed. Why are all animals, when we feed them, it's called feed, but when we feed dogs and cats, only dogs and cats, it's now labeled as food? Ultra-processed food manufacturers and marketing claims and humanizing everything. And they know that our dogs and cats are our children. So it's changing those perceptions for people to understand that the food that we eat and that nurtures us is the same food that would no differently nurture our animals. And you saw that talk, you saw how I started the talk. Why is it in human nutrition science that we're told to eat more minimally processed food and avoid ultra-processed food? But why is it in animal nutrition science? Why are animals different where ultra-processed food is supposed to be better for them and more scientific, and avoid minimally processed food because it can harm them? It makes no sense. So we have to ask more questions because it's not right.
Yeah, it's so frustrating, isn't it? Because, for a dog owner, it's just like, I think it will become common sense, right? And I think as a pet parents 2.0, you become one when that's kind of common sense. It's like, this is the reality of it. This is, fresh food is fresh food. Fresh, like it's exactly like you said, right? It's like you look at it, this is the food that an animal should be eating, not like there is kibble, but there is also this premium option. No, is the option to give them the happiest, longest, and healthiest possible
You know
life.
who kills me? And I hope you clip this, and I hope people hear this. Let me tell you who kills me. These beautiful content creators that are trying to get views, right? And how are they trying to get views? They do these food reviews of human food. So they'll say, I'm going to rate human food. And they'll have like broccoli, and they'll have an apple, and they'll have a carrot. And they'll be like, I give this a 10 out of 10. And I give this a 9 out of 10. They kill me because I understand where their heart and their intent is, but you're just vilifying whole fresh foods when you do that. When you say this food is better than this food, which is better than that food, it confuses people because they're not going to remember your rating. They just watched it for a moment, and then you may have chosen maybe, let's say, blueberries to be number one, but you scared them off of other foods. I have like veterinarians that are now showing up in my newsfeed that are my friends, and I kind of want to text them and say something, but hopefully they see this podcast and they understand it better, that are rating human foods like, I don't like watermelon, it's high in sugar. What are you talking about, man? It's like over 95% water. Like, what do you mean? Like, why are you the health benefits that are inside watermelon? Like, don't scare people. Or sugar and carrots, always the biggest one. Those people kill me so much. Nobody's ever Googled the glycemic index of a carrot. There's so much fiber in a carrot. It's considered low glycemic, but people think that it's full of sugar. So they say, don't eat carrots because it's full of sugar and it's going to cause yeast and starch in your dog. No, dum-dum. It's all fiber. Like, Google the GI index of the vegetable before. So, yeah.
And then we're happy with, like a carrot in, I don't know, fresh dog food is bad. But then we're happy with, like 60% of carbs in bag of kibble.
Right.
And that's the thing that gets me. It's like, it's still a fresh food. It's still got like nutritional value. It might not be the same as a piece of chicken, but it still does the job to contribute to.
Yeah, don't attack whole food. Here's a great example. Carrots are part of the apiaceous vegetable family. If you talk to scientists, apiaceous vegetables detox mold, aflatoxins, mycotoxins. You can't avoid mycotoxin exposure. So when you tell people that carrots are full of sugar, you have now removed one food item that could have detoxed mycotoxins from the diet because you vilified it as being high in sugar. The University of Delaware just funded a study showing that carrots, apiaceous vegetables, can detox acrolein. Acrolein comes, by the way, acrolein is loaded in ultra-processed food and kibble, but acrolein can also be produced from frying food in your household. So if you own a frying pan and you've ever fried a food item, you're going to create acrolein. The animal inhales it. It is bad for the body. Guess what a carrot can do? It can detox the acrolein. But then you went and made a video and you told people that carrots are bad and too much is full of sugar, and you've removed the one component that can help detox the animal.
Yes.
God put it on the planet for a reason, man. So man did not make food better. The good Lord did. And it kills me when people are like, well, I can make God's foods better and I'll create ultra-processed food. Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But for those that are listening that are content creators, I love you. And I'm not trying to attack you. And you may have made those videos attacking fresh whole foods. But if you are somebody who loves and believes that minimally processed foods are better than ultra-processed foods, and I know where your heart is saying that this food is better than that food and so on and so forth, it confuses the casual pet parent. The 1.0 pet parent that doesn't even, whole food isn't even on their list yet. They're still in the ultra processed food world. It confuses them and scares them because then when they see these items in a grocery store, they see these items, as you said, Gaia, in like a raw food company or a whole food company, it doesn't matter. They avoid it because that content creator told them that it was bad.
What do you think, right? If I'm a dog owner, whether I'm a 1.0, 2.0 pet parent, and I want to get, kind of dog health and nutrition advice, where is the best place for me to go and who should I be listening to?
So this is kind of how this all works, right? When you get information, we all get it from one place. Like the place that you're going to get it from is usually a study, right? So a study will come out. Now, whether Rodney reads it, Gaia reads it, a veterinarian reads it, a plumber reads it, or an electrician reads it, we have all these people, let's just say, have followings. So they're going to share that content, which is great. Historically, when I'm a as a pet parent, in the beginning, there's these people that I like. So if I love Gaia and I like how Gaia resonates with me, I'm going to get my information from Gaia, right? It's why you have the following that you're going to accumulate over the years and years of creating content. Once I get that information from Gaia and I want to learn more about it, because Gaia runs a podcast, Rod talks forever. It's been almost 2 hours and he just keeps blabbing about the same thing. I wanted to know, Rod said something earlier about pine salt and his grandmother and what the hell's wrong with pine salt? What's Rod talking about? I use that cleaner in my house. So I watch Gaia's information because the guests that she brings on are going to give me a piece of information that I'm going to go back and research. So then I usually go to Google Scholar, right? Or wherever you like to get your information. I know everyone goes to AI today, but I put it in there and I'll put pine salt. And then I just read studies, or I will go to science sites. Like I like sciencedaily.com, but there's always that influencer, and I hate the word influencer, but that person that inspires you to want to dig deeper. So I would recommend watching your podcast and getting information from you and the guests that you bring on, and then taking those pieces of information and then going back and doing research. I think everybody's in the right mindset. Like I know that there's this whole conventional, like in the vet space, do I listen to a conventional vet or do I listen to an integrative vet? You listen to both of them because both of them love animals. Because a conventional vet, let's just pretend, who has got a popular Facebook page, just says Rod's an idiot. Okay, that's okay. That's her view or his view. But they're still going to give you incredible information that is from a different lens, from a different box that I'm going to learn from. So I think you should listen to everybody. I think you should listen to as many podcasts or read as many magazines. I know people are against podcasts today, but sadly, that's the way of the future. But get your information from people that resonate and communicate with you properly, but they could also be wrong, or there could be something that doesn't align with you, and then learn from there. I think we all have something to learn from somebody. You could go outside right now, meet somebody on the side of the road, and they're going to know something that you didn't, and they can teach you. And if you're open to learning and being a sponge, and especially learning, unlearning, and relearning, you're going to go so far in life, because what was right today can be wrong tomorrow, because science is evolving and changing. And you have to put your humility aside and be willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn, because life changes, information changes, and it's really important keeping up to date.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this is why I think it can feel overwhelming, because it changes all the time. And I completely agree with you. I think it's just, making sure that someone is qualified and is an expert in a way, but everyone can have different views. I always say, right, everyone has got different clinical experience. Everybody's got different qualifications. So I could be a vet in the UK. You could be a vet in Canada. What you've been taught in like 4, 5, 6, 7 years of university versus what I've been taught, completely different. I've worked for 10 years in a vet practice. What I've learned versus what you learn is completely different. So as long as you do have that qualification and you have worked with animal and you helped animal in some kind of like way, shape and form, we both have value to add, I think, and people can learn from both of us, as long as it's, not like what you said, information like these influencers just say, don't have blueprint. Or
it's easy to criticize other people's comments being me and you, content being me and you, because sometimes it's hard. It is sometimes hard for me when I say young and upcoming content creator, and I know that what they're saying isn't factual, but I also made a lot of mistakes in my journey growing up and trying to share information that I'm sure I made mistakes about. And usually you can learn from that, but you'll never see me like in comment sections. I will privately DM somebody if I think it's like really bad information. I won't tell them it's really bad information. I'll be like, hey, did you know that blah, 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 right? Because we're all on our journeys and we're all just trying to make the world a better place. Yes. Like you said, I don't like, you don't see me making, like there are some people that will do now the whole reaction video to try to build a following, because they say the fastest way to build a following is just make a reaction video and criticize other people. But I don't think that's the right way to move forward. I know that there's some people in the space that, that could clip this and then make a reaction video out of it. But I really don't think that moves the dial forward. It can be entertaining in the entertainment business, but in the vet space or in the medical space or in the nutrition-based space, it can really confuse people. And more importantly, it just makes people angry with each other. Somebody makes a reaction video about you or me, or I make one about them. It doesn't make you feel good. It's somebody belittling you on camera for views and for a take. If you truly don't agree with somebody, and this is what my father told me and his father taught him, reach out to that person and have a conversation. That's how we should be communicating with each other. You love dogs, I love dogs, we want them to live forever. You make a reaction video about me, That's you don't communicate. I'm old fashioned, man. That's not how you communicate. There's no reason that we can't disagree with each other like in a civil level, but let's have a conversation. You don't think that you should put vegetables in an animal's diet? I think I should, that vegetables hold an unbelievable benefit in health. I don't have to slam you. I could just privately message you and say, look, let's share some science.
Yeah. I so totally agree with you. Like one thing I was thinking to do with DAFY is I'm launching this community where I'm going to be doing talks, like experts are going to come in to do like talks every month, just educational talks about dog health and nutrition. Yeah. And one thing that I really feel like is missing nowadays is debates. But not debates to have an argument.
Healthy debates.
Healthy debates between experts that might not necessarily agree. There are so many debates, like, you go on a call and you have 4 people that are all very integrative the way they work versus, like 4 people that are, I don't know, like very conventional. And it's like all they talk about is how bad the other people are, misinforming people. But the reality of it is, why can't we put all of these people in one room or 2 people and just say, look, you love dogs. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You might learn something from each other, or you might not.
That's brilliant.
And I think that it should be the way to go forward. I think people I'm going to struggle to find the people that want to do this, but I feel like that's so needed, because then at least you can kind of see both perspectives.
Who's somebody,
that's educating.
Who's somebody right now on your side of the world that you disagree with their information, but they're like influential? That's a very polarizing question that I ask you. Let me not say disagree, but maybe you would like to have a conversation because the way that the content is bundled doesn't feel right to you.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say who, but
okay.
I definitely have.
But like higher up people that wouldn't insult them as much as, like, because young and upcoming. Okay, maybe that was a terrible way to say it, but is there somebody influential that wouldn't be bothered by you saying I don't love the content? So then, what I've always done is that there's somebody influential on my level. Somebody influential online that may be saying something that I've learned differently from a scientist, that I just got out of a lab and they said something, I just DM them. I don't even comment. I don't comment in their comment section, because that's kind of insulting to them too. Like when you go to somebody's page and you comment on their page, sure, you can do it as a reaction. I'm not saying that people don't do it. That's why comments are there, to react. But I'll DM them privately because I find it disrespectful to comment on their page like, hey, that's stupid what you're saying, or hey, this is wrong what you're saying. You get a different response when you privately DM them. Now, they might not answer you, and that's fine too. But if you can bundle it up in a professional way and they're willing to open up conversation, there are many people in this space that don't agree with the things I say or the way that I share science. No question. And that's going to be like that in anything you do in the world, right? You have to understand that the more influential you become, the more you're going to make people uncomfortable. It's the nature of growth, right? Like imagine being a president or a prime minister. 50% of the country is not going to like you. Just because they just politically think differently, right? So I always believe that rather than going on and disrespecting them on their pages and online, send them a private conversation. And if they truly want to learn more about you or learn more about the topic, they'll respond. And you can have a really healthy conversation or a healthy debate, like you said, where 2 people come on very respectfully and they just share science and you let the audience decide. People enjoy those as well. I just think you'll never see me ever make disrespectful content about somebody unless they have been extremely disrespectful to me or a friend, right? Like I won't you slap me and I slap you back. Don't complain that you got slapped because you shouldn't have slapped me in the first place. But also that's not right too, because my mother would say if somebody slaps you, turn around and walk the other way. So there is kind of that too. I have sometimes clapped back when somebody, attacks one of my friends, but I try to be respectful still at the same time about it. But nobody in our space ever has to worry about me attacking them because that's just not my vibe. I'll reach out to you first and we'll have a private conversation. And I think more people need to be like that. But anyway, sorry, that's my rant 100%. Today, what's happening
but I agree.
With these reaction
it's
videos.
such an important point, isn't it? Because I think that's where a lot of the anger comes from and a lot of the confusion comes from, is because people don't talk to each other. They offend each other through comments, through, exactly what you said they do, right? Like it's quite actually opened my mind quite a lot as of why we have so much confusing and conflicting advice, because you go to Instagram and you get like a remix or a repost of something you've posted with like 10 minutes of why you're wrong and why they should be listening to you. And then they publish like a reel, and then you go all the comments and it's like, show me some evidence, show me this, show me that, like arguing, like, and it's just, that's not healthy. You're not helping dog owners at all. You're making them even more confused. It's not a safe space. It's not a calm space. People are not happy into that space. You're making them more anxious than, and everything just becomes way more complex for them. And
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree. The last question is, what are you working on next? And, just tell the audience what's your next plan. So you just released the second book, which is amazing. But I know you're working on something else. What is it?
Yeah. So we're currently right now, the biggest thing that people need and guidance with all of the issues that are happening worldwide, globally, with diseases with animals. We're trying to put together a manual, if you may, for disease states and what people need to do if, God forbid, their animal comes upon a specific disease, and those being like the top 10 to top 20 diseases that animals can suffer from. But it's a community project. We're going to the world's top board certified specialists or scientists in those fields with the most current and up-to-date information of what people can do. And it's a big project, and there's a lot of doctors and scientists involved. And that's what we're currently trying to put together, this monstrosity of project that's probably going to take up the next year and a half of my life.
Because you were getting bored, right? Like publishing a book.
Just because I got nothing else to do.
I'm done now.
Just because I got nothing else to do, right?
I love it so much. Oh, goodness. But thank you so much. Honestly, I have loved talking to you. I would love to do a part 2 at some point early next year.
Come to Nova Scotia. We'll do one here. We'll do one in person here at the Creator Studio.
I love that. My husband works in the US quite a lot. He's got a lot of US clients. And
I see the Miami Dolphins helmet above you there, so I assume so.
I do love Miami Dolphins as well. I'm not going to lie.
I love it.
I think the color is like very girly. But I'd love to go. Yeah, and I've got loads of experts that are there in Canada, but also in the US. So I would absolutely love to come there, and I would love to do it live. And thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you. And thank you so much for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for watching. If you found this episode helpful, follow us on Instagram. And if you want first access to DAFY, join our waitlist now. The links are in the show notes.